Hey guys, welcome back. It's time to go back, take a little looky poo at what's going on. We have a ton of new information coming out from both PFM, and I got a little bit of a juicy screenshot that may indicate, now that we know that some of these were printed recently, it might be more than a coincidence or a little bit of trolling from one of the individuals involved. Let's go through all the details. I have a ton of details. We got to get through it pretty quickly. First up, we have a post here. It seems like some of these playtest cards could be real. We have one of the posts here by PFM. If you haven't thanked PFM for this yet, if you haven't given them a little follow on the old Instagram, I suggest you do so. If you see him in person at an event or something, maybe buy him a beverage if you can. All right, here it is. Selfless act. Absolutely selfless act. He owned copies of the cards. He potentially is going to take a loss on it. We'll see if CGC does the right thing and refunds everyone. I don't know if CGC did it knowingly, if they had any part in it, if they were kind of negligent, if their insurance would cover that sort of thing, if they're insured for that sort of thing. It's hard to say. We're going to have to stay tuned. Rusty talked to Matt Quinn, CGC's guy of trading card dudes, and apparently they're going to make a statement. Is it going to be fluff? Probably. Are we going to see what happens? Maybe. I don't know. The article on the cards themselves was pretty lackluster, so an apology or a statement about what's going on and what happened. How did they get duped? Did they get duped? Were they tricked? Were they in on it? We'll have to stay tuned and find out. That's the biggest thing here, is finding out, and we'll take a look at it. Who was involved? Who knew? Who tricked who? What was going on? Same thing we saw with the fake case, with the Logan case. Who was duped? Who wasn't duped? No, I don't think anyone was duped there. I think the only people that were duped were the liquid marketplace investors and or customers of the users of the platform. All right, real users of the platform. All right, PFM here with this post says, I've been given high-res scans of some of the first alpha cards that hit the market. Notice the high-quality backs. So that's the thing, too. We're seeing a lot of differences. Some are higher quality, some are lesser quality. Some are scans, some are printed recently. It seems like the vast majority of this stuff is printed in 2024. Who would have thought? Who would have guessed? And if you take a look here, I don't know if these were mounted on card before, after, where they were, when that happened. But you can see here there was a lot less care, a lot less attention, and it looks like these lower grade copies, maybe they were actually playtests. Maybe that was a sign. When we see these lower, lesser grade copies, maybe these were originals. Maybe then we started making the fakes. And who's to blame? We're going to find out. And if we don't find out, I would imagine the FBI is going to find out, because we got, this is like $5 million worth of cards that were sold. Like, that's a lot of money. They've stepped in for way less than that. This is pretty elaborate, pretty crazy, pretty wild. And we're hopping on in here. We're going to try and decipher what's going on. And again, all the information that I gather, I will gladly forward it on to them. See what they can do. Hopefully everyone is made right. Does CGC have the ability to make everyone right in this scenario, in this situation? Who knows? We'll have to find out. So here we have, fortunately, all three have the Xerox pattern. I want to omit the printer serial number because, one, they aren't my cards, and two, I don't want to encourage people to fake print dots in the future. That's the thing, too. It's just like, how do you trust any of this stuff? There's so many fakes that were made. Are people in the future going to replicate that? Are they gonna fake it to some extent? Probably. The incentive is there. When there's millions of dollars at stake, and somebody learns, hey, if I fake it and it says 1996 with the dots, people are going to believe it. People are going to buy it. So just the entire thing, the entire situation, the entire items of this sort are just super, super dangerous. Now, if it was back in a time where no one really cared, it wasn't worth that much money, you had provenance behind it, you had the ability to check who and where it came from, different story. This day and age, Pokemon is hype max to the extreme. There's so many dollars involved in this. And yes, everyone's like, oh, it's just the big collectors that got screwed on this. Not necessarily. When you got some of these cards in like a few $1,000s, and you hear stories about somebody that traded like their whole collection in order to buy one of these because they just wanted a piece of like the history. Well, now it's Now it's a little bit of a tainted piece. So yes, follow PFM on the old Instagram. Give him a big old thank you for your efforts. Thank you for your sacrifice. It's good to see. It's good to see that the people that have been around for a long time, many of them have the hobby in their best interest. And this is like a prime example. He could have sold those cards off. He could have discovered that, been like, "Oh shit, I bought a bunch of fake cards. I bought a bunch of recently printed test prints, sold them off, and then published it, or just never said anything at any point." Instead, he's potentially losing himself a ton of money. All right, so that's the video from yesterday. If you haven't seen it, the Logan first aid base case, the amount of people like comparing this to the Logan case and then not realizing, like, they're like, "Oh yeah, but it was only Logan got scammed in that case. Only Shine got scammed in that case." I got bad news for you. The sale was faked, according to Shine. And the recorded phone call that I have with him, that sale was fake. Logan never bought it. Logan wanted to put it on Liquid Marketplace. Everyone was involved with Liquid Marketplace. It's my opinion that they were all in on it. They were just trying to make a fake case look like a real case so they could sell fractional shares of it on their platform that also ended up being a scam, according to officials, according to law enforcement and regulators in Canada. Because that's where Liquid Marketplace was at. It seemed like it was a scam. The platform was a scam. It seemed like the Vox, including Logan, in my opinion, they all knew about it. Just want to get that out there because people seem to like, it dropped off. It dropped off. Not enough people saw the later videos. Whoop-de-doo. They were all in on it, in my opinion. Now, we have the smoking gun that I promised you about. This one here is a post here by Sean, where Zhao, one of the people posting a lot, who was in possession of these cards, and in hindsight, this is like, initially you're just like, "Oh, is he just trolling? Is he just saying something stupid?" This was the screenshot, at least. I took it on September 7th, 2024. On Sean's post, and if you look here, we have Zhao saying, "Can you please tell him stop fucking prints them?" Now, at the time, if you don't know if they're printing them or not, this could just be a dumbass comment. Now, where we know that they were printed recently in 2024, is this just Zhao knows that they're being printed? Is that what's going on here? That's what it looks like to me. That seems like a really weird coincidence to be saying that he's printing them. He's printing more of them. And they were being printed in 2024. Now, it's hard to say exactly who knew. It's hard to say if Akabane knew, if it was his scheme, if he was put up to it. Maybe he didn't realize, like, hey, maybe he was asked, "Can you print more off? Print more off, sign them, make them super official." And at what part in the chain? So we have the chain here, posted by Rattle Pokemon. Give them a follow as well, if you don't mind. So here we have the prototype breakdown. And we have everyone involved, at least what I think is everyone involved. And to my knowledge, and anyone that I've checked with, it seems like this all checks out. So we have a Nadukin bought from Akabane directly in 2022. Alpha starters. We got Pro Retrox, Alpha Pika, Tang, Alpha Zard, Marco, Koro Zard, Mewtwo, Clefairy, sold on PWCC this year. So that's where we might get into like the real stuff, the stuff that was purchased early on, the stuff that was shown early on. But at what point did they just fire up the printers? And who was firing up the printers? Was it Akabane? Was it somebody that was assisting with them? Was it Kimura? We're going to have to stay tuned and find out. That's one of those things that like we might never find out, but also at the same time, if there's anyone that's like involved in these transactions, they probably want to clear their name. They probably want to be the person that says, "Hey, no, this person sold it. I had no idea." And that person, there's going to be some throwing under the bus kind of actions, which is kind of typical of this stuff. People are going to blame other people. People are potentially going to play dumb. People are going to out others if they get outed themselves. It kind of the same song and dance. And if it doesn't come out, if the FBI is involved, they're going to check all the records. They're probably going to be able to find out, hey, who knew? Who didn't know? Who tricked who? Was there any tricking at all? What's going on here? So we have Kimura, who offered some people to meet Akabane. We have Sean in April 2024. We got BW Sprites, Alpha, Beta, Alpha Presentation. We got Beam, Stevoid, faithful client of Kimura 2, bought all the sets. Then we have Steady and Marco in September. So we have some people going through here. Then we have Kimura, who is apparently, according to the diagram and according to the leaks and the information that has been acquired by Wataru, who says actual boss behind the scenes, claims to be Akabane's nephew. So here, Worlds 2024, we get some other people involved. In Worlds 2024 that happened in August, played a big role in these going out to other collectors, and this is where we saw some other sets. So we had made deals with in person with other people. Now, it's hard to say who knew, other than if somebody gets burned, if somebody's put on the spot and they're kind of forced into revealing that other people knew about this stuff. It's that comment, man. That comment is wild. The fact that he was saying to tell him to stop printing them. So we have Gem and Pokemon, we have Zhao Zhao, we have Baddock, and we have Benjamin here. Whether those were deals in person, if you brought those in person, if more were supposed to be promised. It sounded like, and that's the thing too, it's just like, it was really weird that the number changed depending on who you were talking to. The number was unknown. CGC didn't publish a number of like, he has this many sets. None of the people that were selling them, some of them were saying that there was this many sets. Now, whether they were lying about how many were in existence, or they were talking about the real card, or maybe they were, maybe they weren't aware of additional prints that happened after that. It's an absolute, this is a mess. This is a shit show and a half. We move into this, we have like Lotus and everything else. We'll have to see how this turns up. If anyone comes forward to say, hey, I had nothing to do with this. It was not me. I got the duped too. And whether or not CGC is going to pay out the full amount that whoever paid last, similar to like a PSA guarantee, whether they're going to fight you on it, whether they're going to just straight up give you a refund, to be determined. So for anyone that isn't aware, we have some prior coverage on Xiao with he was faking PSA slabs. He was, or somebody else was for him. Essentially, he would crack out a 10. He would take the PSA 10 out of the card itself out. He would resubmit that card, and then he would use that label in a fake slab, put in a lesser condition card, try to sell that off. So people wouldn't be able to tell, short of matching up. If you looked up the PSA cert number, you could match the hollow foil pattern, you could match the damage, you could match the centering, that sort of thing, in order to find that. Very difficult, very elaborate scam that we haven't seen, I don't think, from anyone else until that point. So, pretty wild stuff. Now, Akabane, did he have anything to do with it? There's people that are yelling from the rooftop. He did it. He was all in it. It was his elaborate scam, his scheme. Was anyone else? Did someone convince him to do it? We don't know that at this point in time. I think it's also possible that people asked him to reprint stuff. Maybe he wasn't fully aware of the extent of what was going on. We're going to find out a little bit later on. Apparently, some people have heard tellings of a potential legal action that was taken by Pokemon against Akabane. Now, whether or not that's just because he was releasing stuff in general, when you start printing off your own cards and you start selling them for big dollar values, and like they are not going to be impressed. I mean, printing off whatever it is, you can get in some big trouble. Releasing stuff, you can get in some big trouble. The early, Pokemon company in the form of when WotC had hold of it was printing. There was a lot of takesies homesies kind of thing going on with anyone that worked at the print facility, with anyone that worked in the developmental process of the game, that sort of thing. Japan, not so much. So you don't see very many old sheets or anything of that type. So here, Benjamin.be.13 says the legitimacy of these cards are in question recently, but what I do know is that these cards are signed by Akabane-san, and he said that these were his personal copies and are real. So if he's personally saying that, and if those end up being real, not real, and then, again, did anyone at any point say, like, these are personal copies, these are additional copies, these are printed extra copies? And it wouldn't surprise me if the cop out, if somebody along the chain and or CGC they start to say like, oh, well, it doesn't, we never said they were printed in 1996. That's where the file was made. So we put 1996 on the label. We didn't say if this was a reprint or anything like that. I don't know if they'll do that. I don't think anyone will let them get away with that. Now I'm seeing a lot of people that are like, oh, yeah, the other grading companies are bad too. So we should, no, never mind. Did you see all the scandals with the other grading companies and the auction companies? Yeah, you shouldn't give any of them a free pass. If they do bad things, hold them accountable for their bad things, not pass it off as other companies also do bad things. Right? Got me? Please? We don't want, that is not a good trend. Just letting them get away with stuff, letting them do stuff, letting them, especially if they had any involvement with it. Was it them being lazy? Was it them being too eager? I've said it many times on the channel. I think CGC is over. They are way too brazen in trying to authenticate, trying to encapsulate anything that's new, because the grading companies can easily get caught up in it. It's publicity. Even if they're not getting extra grading fees, they will do a lot of this shit for free. A big sports card gets pulled, they'll do it for free because they want it to be in their slab. So meanwhile, you at home, Jimmy John Johnson, you get upcharged. You're going to get upcharged from PSA. You're going to have to pay grading fees on that. Now, Tony Toninson, who just pulled a big ass card. He pulled the One Ring. He pulled a 1-of-1 sports card Super Extreme Plus. Maybe you have a whole collection that you'll grade. They're going to do you favors. They want to look good. They want people to see, hey, they're grading the best of the best with this company. Oh, what, the One Ring? Oh, only the best grading company would grade that. Meanwhile, they're all fighting over it, offering lights, whatever it might be, free grading, maybe a tummy rub. I don't know what they offered, but they were fighting over it. They all want to do it. The same thing with this. They want to be part of the history because everyone that posted everywhere, that's advertising. This is some of the most expensive advertising that CGC could ever pay for if they have to shell out all the money from this. We'll see what happens. Are they going to take ownership? Are they going to dial it back? We've seen it with other games. We've seen it with other cards where there just isn't enough information. And it's just which grading company is going to take the risk. They want to get on it first, but they also don't. You end up looking stupid. It's like the error Charizard that they had where it was missing ink, but it was just a laminated one. If they don't do enough research or they don't catch, hey, this isn't the real thing, this isn't what we're calling it, they just end up looking stupid. And potentially it costs them a ton of money. I also have videos and pictures of him holding and signing these cards, so either these are real or Akabane-san is in on the scam. So, possible. I mean, there is like a possibility that some of the ones that were extra printed, I think there's a very good chance that he knew that there were extras printed. Now, whether or not he knew the repercussions or what those were being used for, or he just saw it as a payday and he didn't care, and if he's, apparently he's sick, if he's dying, if he's sick, and he just wants the money for his family, that's no excuse. It's still no excuse to rip people off, whether you're dying or not. Doesn't matter. Still need to be ethical. Now, whether or not he knows the full extent of what's going on here is a different story. If people were just asking, hey, can you print more of these? You have the files. Can I have the files? Can you print these? Can we scan these? Can we copy these? Can you sign them? And then the signatures that were going on these, I have a hard time believing that it wasn't some sort of form of like lending authenticity to something that was just reprinted. And now whether or not any of this was disclosed to CGC, if CGC is going to authenticate these, they need to be looking into all of that stuff. If you're going to authenticate something that was just printed off with a normal printer and paper, you need to have some sort of a super duper provenance beyond the person that is financially benefiting from these. We saw it with the proto stores. The proto stores, the story changed from the person that they were all lending their ear to. Shell from who was a typesetter at WotC. And he was telling the story. He didn't know where it came from. He didn't know the story behind it, but then he did know the story behind it when he was used for it. But then also, he was secretly selling another copy of the proto stores. So it's like all of this stuff not only do you need to hear it firsthand from who's involved, but you need to hear it from people that aren't financially motivated by it. Like the vested interest problem is a huge problem, because if someone's going to benefit financially by telling a better story, they're probably going to do it. So I don't know where the line is there. If I had to guess, I'm going to say that people encouraged the printing. Any of the people that were buying from him, that were assisting him in these deals, were requesting that more got printed because the files were available. That, or in some cases, as we'll see today, we have scans where you can see the dots and then you see the dots again. So the dots that indicate the date on some of these cards. Now, just because the dots are good does not mean you should trust it. Are the original ones that he sold, the original copies? I think they're more likely to be legitimate, but also at the same time, you got to realize that if there's $5 million involved for this or future copies of this stuff, people will find a way. They can go into the printer, they can change the date. Is it something they're going to do? Maybe. Is it something that could be... It's just, there's just no reason, or there's no... The risk versus reward is just not worth it. Because, like, at this point in time, this is so tarnished and so dangerous and so, like, no one should touch this stuff. It's a shame, because it should be something that's enjoyed by people that are true fans. People like PFM, who's doing this, who's going through this, destroyed his own value in his cards that he purchased in hopes that they were real, because he wants the truth to be known about all of this. So, like, it's just, it's sad, because it wasn't like this. It wasn't always like this. Yes, there was money in Pokemon. Yes, the rarest stuff was always more expensive. And yes, there was a allure to, like, the trophy cards and anything like that. Your illustrators and stuff like that. But even then, with the extra copies of that stuff, a lot of it just gets grimy and terrible. And it sucks, because it taints all of it. Here are the Pokemon beta presentation cards for Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise, signed by Pokemon TCG co-creator Takumi Akabane. This set used to be called Alpha Presentation by CGC, but was recently renamed to a Beta Presentation. I'm posting this set again because I upgraded the Charizard to a pristine 10. CGC Signature Series holders also mean that the signing of these cards by Akabane-san was witnessed by a CGC representative. So that's the thing too. Like, and then it seems like some of these cards, the issue with some of these cards is it seems like they were signed after the fact, and it looks like these ones might have been also. If we give it a zoom in, you can see that some of this stuff comes off. Is it coming off? Is it coming off of the paper? So if he was signing this stuff, I think at bare minimum, if CGC witnessed this being signed and it was in sheet form before it was cut up, before it was mounted on cardstock, I think that is deceitful of them. They'll not be mentioning, like, the process, the being fully transparent about what was going on. I don't know if that was the case. It would be great if CGC could share some of that information. I don't know. It's just all of it is bad. So back to Zhao, the guy that was doing the old PSA case swapperoos. Not a very good guy. Not a great guy from what I'm seeing. And we have this here. This posted where he says, "So I have to say, I just bought it a few days ago, and the background is at 7-Eleven shop. My driver took this pic when they deal it." So we got a little bit of broken English, but we can try and figure out what's going on here exactly. We have a printed off sheet of what is trophy cards, and it's the picture's taken on a printer. So this is, again, one of those instances where is he trolling, or is he just being open and honest? And, like, we've seen it before. Sometimes scammers, they just want to show you that they're scamming. They got away with it. They think they're invincible. They think whatever. We can joke about this stuff. But here it is. We got some scans going down. What it looks like, allegedly. It says, "This is Uncut sheet.
is without holo. It's prints on cardboard and from Akabane directly. So, was that printed? Did Akabane print it? Did Zhao print it? Who was doing the printing here? I don't know what I should say first. Firstly, I know recently CGC stopped grading playtest cards because they've received some fake cards. There are people trying to make fake copies from China factory and get them graded. So how does he know this? How was he seeing this? Was it him that was making the fake copies? Is that why he purchased some of them so that he could copy them and make them? And what I'd love to know what CGC was using as a way to reject this. So, and it seems like, according to Zhao, they did grade some of the ones that came from China, which is pretty crazy. CGC realized it and won't grade more without provenance proof. So if anyone buy playtest cards, better buy graded ones. Don't buy raw cards without confirmed proof. As we've seen, it seems like most of the test print cards that are in circulation, that have been released, that have been graded by CGC, are printed in 2024. Here he says, secondly, I personally didn't really care if it's printed yesterday or today. I'm sure you don't, because you're selling them without disclosing that. No one's going to care if they're just making money off of it. The people that are buying these should care, because if it's just printed now, where there's no historical value there, other than maybe it's a time capsule of when people got scammed. If you have these in CGC cases, do not break them out. Do not crack the case. To take pictures, to do whatever you're going to do with it. Keep it in the case. Make sure you have receipts of what you purchased for, where you purchased, and when you purchased, all of that stuff. And hopefully they're going to refund you. If they don't, there should be a giant uproar and the company should not exist anymore. Because if they're gonna go out, they're gonna chase the big thing, the big prototype, the new thing, the new discovery. They're so groundbreaking. But again, in the past, they showed that they did all kinds of scans, all kinds of everything else. Did they do any scans? Did they do anything other than they claimed, hey guys, trust us. We talked to Akabane, the person who's selling these, the person who has more vested interest than anyone else, and apparently has the ability to print off more of them, whether it's him printing or other people printing. And CGC is just going to take his word for it. It's just infinite money glitch, and it makes a whole lot more sense now why everyone was trying to dump these. Because it seems like there was just more and more being printed or put out based on the dates. We're going to take a look at the dates. We're going to take a look at more of the posts, more of the information published by PFM and others that are helping to try and this absolute mess of a jigsaw puzzle, put it all together. Akabane says the playtest cards is limited at 10, and that's it. Well, I don't care if he prints off 10 of each at this point in time. That doesn't matter. As we've seen, it seems like people are also photocopying them, who that was, and if those can be, I'm sure that can be traced back. And then if it gets traced back to the person that was photocopying it, or does it go all the way back up to Akabane? The playtest cards is truly exist from 1995. All the protos was made from 1995. So even they printed just now, if the number of editions is stay at 10, it is valuable for me. Maybe some people disagree, but I have to say this is a fact. So this is just fucking weird, and this dude needs to go fuck off somewhere else. Although it seems like they don't want him in the art world either, because there's a ton of people complaining that he doesn't pay for his stuff there. There's a ton of people complaining that he was doing the sketchies over in that scene as well. So this is the kind of shitty stuff that you see when Pokemon ends up being worth a ton of money, especially in a boom, especially with the pandemic, especially with the recent boom in Pokemon. This is the kind of grimy shit that comes along with it. It's unfortunate, it sucks, and it's not like a gatekeeping thing. More the merrier, but when there's a stupid amount of money in it, you're gonna have the cons are coming out. The cons are back in town. Cons are here. They're here now. You need to be careful with this stuff. And yes, you don't need to be a big collector to spend a few $1,000s on one of these and get ripped off, when you could have spent it on other stuff that was legitimate. So it's not just boohoo for the richest of the rich. From what I've heard, the most someone spent on these is in excess of $1 million. But you also have individual collectors who maybe they like a certain Pokemon. Maybe they buy that certain Pokemon, and they got fucked. What I know is when CGC started being graded playtest cards, they got approved from PTCG first. So the playtest card is obviously exist in the world now, but maybe there are fakes already exist too. So please be careful. So that's the thing too. Shame on CGC if they're working with this individual. As we said in the past, they need to be careful who they're doing business with. But if you have somebody who is tied to deceiving people with your competition slabs, and as we've seen, the CGC slabs are even easier to open and reseal than the PSA ones, so it doesn't even require a fake necessarily. Be careful for that. What do we got here? We got another post by him that says, this picture from China factory is when people trying to making a fake playtest. They bought a few real ones and make copies and then send to CGC, but they don't know how playtest card is only edition 10, and the CGC always asks for confirming provenance before they grade. So they are making more, they can't be graded. Smiley face. All right, well, that's enough French Cowboy for now. I'm going to try and save my voice because we got a lot to go. We all know the playtest cards is much easier to make fake as it's on cardboard without hollow, but the paper is definitely different with the real cards, and colors a bit different too. No kidding. We've seen different versions. We've seen different qualities of the prints themselves. CGC seems to be chalking all that up to, hey, this is this print, that print, alpha, data, momega, bobega, bega, all the call signs. So pretty soon we're going to run out. All the cards, if graded, then it's real. That's no doubt, because if it's fake, you can sue the graded company. They will definitely pay all your loss back. They are more carefully about real or fake. I mean, that's clearly not true. All right, we'll see about are they going to pay everyone out? That's going to be a lot of money. Again, if I had to approximate, probably $5 million. Scary shit. Zhao, what has he got here? Akabane just did an interview a few days ago to explain all the playtest cards issues, now how many series of playtests, how many editions of each cards, etc., and why he's selling recently. Everything will be clear from the video. After that, I believe playtest cards will be valuable. So we'll have to see what is said there. If he is behind it, if he is responsible for it, and if it was done in a malicious way. Again, it could be malicious, or it could be that's the deal he struck with the other people, and then people are not disclosing all the information. And the scary part is that we have CGC not disclosing the information, or enough information, or at least it was lacking in comparison to what they have published before. Is that by design? It kind of feels greasy. This is mine too. I paid over $300K, so be careful. They got these uncut sheets. Again, it's just printed on whatever. There's no hollow foil on it. Is the excuse that this is like test print whatever because they don't have foil, or it's easier to print this onto some other cardstock? Were they printed now? Were they printed later? They were probably printed recently. Be very careful with all of that. Here we have people. I guess he's making the comparison. I'm not going to read all of these, but I do want to archive them, so take a look at this stuff. It's just weird. This is like, and then he's posting about his artwork and his bed, his pumpkin, New Year gift. Again, this is all stuff that was probably printed recently. Can't say for sure. Don't know for sure. But a ton of this stuff started propping up as well after the playtest stuff. Be careful. Be careful. Do not. I wouldn't even if I was even if this was my bread and butter, this was my niche, and I had just a stupid amount of money to spend on it. Be super skeptical where this is coming from. Same source. I don't think anything should be trusted that's coming from that area. But if you are gonna dabble in it, you need to be so extra careful, because people are gonna lie to you. Stuff is going to be hidden, important information. I guess he's in the sports cards there too. So, whoop-de-doo, who would have thought? All right, now we have the thread from before. Again, thank you to PFM for publishing this. Thank you to everyone who has been assisting PFM with it. Thank you for everyone that uses the link tree. That's how the videos on the channel here are very possible. Use the discount codes here, like the one for 10% off your first buy purchase. Troll and Toad, Securus Card Shop, Card Trader, Card Market, Collector app for tracking your collection. Don't send me money. I'd rather you guys shop for the things you're going to buy anyway. These are my recommendations, and these are just like you can probably shop in there anyway. Thank you for taking the extra few seconds. It means a lot, and it helps the channel here when we got to cover scams, when we got to make a video that's going to be as long as this one. That all helps a ton. So let's go through as fast as possible here, because we got a lot of things to look at, a lot of posts to look at. We have PFM who says, another observation I want to mention: the alpha prototypes were likely designed in a tool called ClarisWorks 4, which was available in 1995. Here I emulated an old Mac and ran it. Wild stuff, looking pretty similar, looking pretty wild, looking pretty similar to those. And again, they probably existed. Got to be careful with a lot of this older stuff, with the ones that maybe there's no way to determine whether or not it's new, old, whatever it might be. If it's an old printer, my initial thoughts were that maybe they had the old equipment. If they had the old printer, if they had the old computer, and if they had the files on that computer, then they could print this stuff off. It's a different story with actual Pokemon cards, where you need the card stock with the carbon layer, and you just need the correct ink, the correct card stock. There's so many things. The rosette pattern. There's so many things that you would need that there's not. I do not believe that stuff can be replicated. Can it be Can they make fakes to a scary degree, given any of those components? Like especially the files? Yes, absolutely. Because if you can't check the rosette and you got to check the other materials, the difficulty to figure that stuff out it's scary. That's a scary amount. Now, the files need to be protected. With this stuff, where it's done on paper, and it fooled the grading company who was too eager to grade this stuff and not look into any of that information. This is stuff that, like forensic analysis, that's the kind of stuff that if you're running and you're operating a grading company, you should know all of this stuff. You should know all the printing techniques, whether it's on cardstock or whether it's on a piece of paper. You should know what kind of printer it's coming off of. You should know, hey, maybe these are too mint. Maybe where are all these extra copies coming from? How many people were actually testing the game? A jillion? Were they how infinite? Are they printing them now? Are they printing them before? All of that stuff you would think. So here we have PFM saying that he'll lose thousands of dollars. So again, can't praise him enough for the research and the information that he has published on this. Here he says, one question that's been bothering me with the beta playtest is the art used. It's the red, blue Ken Sugimori watercolor images, but I don't know if the timing makes sense that these were drawn before the release of the TCG. Also, there is no documented source for beta before 2024, as far as I'm aware. I'm really curious if anyone can find the earliest documented usage of the red-blue Sugimori art. For example, I believe Jungle uses only red/green art, March 5th, 1997, and Fossil is where we start to see red-blue. So that's the thing too. They can use an older printer. If the printer still exists, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody that was working with the company still has all of that stuff. If they have leftovers, if they have scraps and test prints and even equipment to some degree. If it was a personal computer and a smaller printer and they still have that thing, it's a scary zone, and it's unfortunate that we have this stuff coming out. Now, we have Gezi TCG, who has been highly critical of CGC and some of the early, prototype type things coming out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Similar criticisms, so good to have his input here. There was some Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff. There was some other stuff that CGC graded, and it just seems like it seems super risky on their end. It seems super dangerous for anyone that's looking to purchase that stuff, and it's just if you can't be certain, if you can't authenticate something beyond a shadow of a doubt, you shouldn't be doing it. Mistakes are going to happen with a grading company, with individual graders who are not making very much money at no fault of their own. It's kind of how the system is designed. People don't want to pay a lot for grading. They got to pump these things through. They look at it for 30 seconds. They throw it in a case. They're going to miss altered cards. They're going to miss fake cards. There's no one can do it all. No one can do it at that speed and not miss anything and not mess up at some point in time. They're going to put the wrong label with the wrong card. They're going to call it the wrong card. They're going to put the wrong grade. Whatever it might be, they're going to hit the 10 button on something that should be a 3. It's just going to happen. There's no avoiding that. You need to buy the card, not the grade. So Gezi TCG here says, absolutely incredible work, and thank you for being candid here. This is what people have feared, and this is going to start a big waterfall of issues. Something else to consider, I've heard from 2 separate sources that Akabane was sued by Pokemon in December. Cannot confirm what it was for. I would like to see or hear more of this. If anyone has information, I'd like to see it, because what he was sued for, whether it was selling the stuff off, whether it was producing more of it, I think that makes a huge difference. And the outcome of whatever happens there is definitely something that we need to keep an eye on to get the full picture, the full story here, which is hopefully something that we can piece together someday. There is a lot of progress being made, but again, there's a ton of small details. Who was involved? Who knew? Whose idea was it? What was going on? That we might have to wait before we find out. PFM says, thanks for sharing the certs. I don't see dots, so it's either not high enough res or they weren't printed on. The one thing I will say regarding the backside gives interesting information. The back is uniquely high quality. Most backs look more like this. So that's the thing too. Can we tell here? Alpha Machop and Alpha Pidgeotto. And then we have this is speculation, but I also believe the backs could be scans/copies. For example, the 2 above have the same hair. So that's the thing too, is just like there was backs put on them. If the cards were only, as we'll see, coming up here, it looks like the cards were cut, the sheets were cut and then put onto these cardstocks recently, at least most of them. I don't know if the older ones were put onto cardstock back in the day or not. I don't know if we'll ever be able to trust or know that for certain. But for the alpha, he found a couple copies with the same hair. This does not say anything about when the cards were made, as they were made. They may have been scanned/copied in 1995. So that's the thing too. Were the backs all scanned and copied? Were they all printed off individually? It'd be weird if they scanned. They had a pile of backs that, again, this is like some of that stuff that you probably aren't going to know if people are being honest. But with the amount of deceit that's going on here, I don't know if we can ever trust or know for certain what's the story behind those. Try and keep up with it. We'll try and piece together what we can. PFM and the gang on E4 are definitely still hard at it. So hopefully we can find out. So there was also a fake Akabane Instagram account. Not sure who was behind that, but they were pumping up the prototypes when they were starting to go up for sale. At least we think it's fake. Whether or not it was fake, I don't know. It's real sketchy. It gets real sketchy. And how much he was involved, not involved, is to be determined. We have Squirtle here. PFM says, in my experience looking at a lot of these, I see evidence of the alpha pattern I described above with the CGC image. This is about as best as it gets. Blue cards tend to show it best because it contrasts with the yellow. Cool little tidbit there. We have Quachancy posting that printer sheet. May have been this exact printer. There was somebody in the last video that mentioned that you might be able to contact the printer company to find out if they received, or you can find out where it was located. Based on the printer information or printer code, if they were supplying restocks or refills for the printer itself, they'd be able to look that up. So I don't know if there's anyone that works there. I don't know if there would be like a Japanese division if these were being printed in Japan, or if we can find out if they were or were not printed. If anyone has information on that, please let me know. If anyone's maybe someone's a Xerox dude and has access to that information, please reach out. Discord's the best way to do so. At me in the old general chat. My DMs are kind of busted at the moment, so that's the best way to reach out. Title Dream says, how do these work then? He signed a ton of them in October 2024 that were witnessed by CGC. He printed them out again. He printed them out, then signing them with some CGC dude present. So that's the thing too. If CGC has some sort of insurance that's going to back them on it, if there's proof that they were kind of aware of what was going on, or they were like ignoring details that they shouldn't have, it gets real sketchy. So we have Pokeson here who says, that makes me question some of the extra copies of Pikachu illustrators in existence. Supposedly there should be 41 copies. I think there's supposed to be 39 legitimate copies, but there are definitely more than that. I don't think anyone knows exactly how many copies exist. She says, but we know there's way more of that in existence right now. We need to decode some of the more recently sold Pikachu illustrators from auction houses like the one below. So I think this has more to do with the fact that there were extra copies. Most of the people that have those extra copies are probably not selling them. How many do they have? We don't know. How many are still in existence that haven't been revealed or sold yet? We don't know. But weird. So it wouldn't surprise me if Akabane had extra copies of these things and was selling them off as well. It looks like he's in money-making mode. Now, whether or not he thinks he's doing the right thing or he is doing the right thing and other people are manipulating it or other people are manipulating him into doing something, I don't know that. We got to stay tuned to find out. Here we have signed by Akabane, assuming the signature is real. It's quite damning as to his level of involvement. So that's the thing too. Does he know that, does he know that it wasn't being disclosed, that this stuff was printed recently? I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest question that we have here. That's the biggest thing that I'd like to know, and hopefully if there is an interview released, it points to or against what's going on there. PFM with the post here says, I have been given a scan of a Delta Charmeleon, and again we got the dots. We can see the dots. It's got the freckles. It's got the old Notaronis. The date in the metadata is 2024-7-10. The printer serial number matches up the one on the OP. I've been given a scan of the Alpha Clefairy doll. It has a complex dot pattern. I suspect it could be 2 dot patterns in one print. When I overlay the dot pattern found on many other alpha cards, shown in white, slightly offset, example is here. So we got scans going on here, and then we have the printer used multiple times. When you overlay the serial number and year pattern from the OP, you can see this. And he says, my hypothesis is that the Alpha Clefairy doll was copied/scanned, picking up the alpha pattern, and then printed on the same printer as the examples from the OP and the Delta Charmeleon. So it looks like we got some scanning going on. It looks like we got some scanning and reprinting, and if the patterns are the same but duplicated, it looks like they were printed off and then scanned and printed by the same thing. So that's the thing too. Were any of the people that were buying these scanning them themselves? Did Akabane say like, oh, whatever, go scan them yourself and make more of them, and then he was signing them? Was he signing them knowingly that they were... I would think that he would be able to tell the difference if the cards came from him or if they were scanned or if he agreed to sign the ones that were printed recently, that sort of thing. Or he agreed as part of the contract or part of the deal that he was going to tell CGC that they were the real deal, that they were the real thing. We're not sure. It'll be interesting to find out. I don't know if all of that information will ever be published, but it would be nice to get some closure for everyone involved. I do feel for everyone, whether it's small multi-$1,000 purchases, and yes, you can be a small collector and have one card as the majority of your collection. So don't just think there's no one that's, that's some pretty big. Let's say you spend 10 grand on something. Your whole collection's worth $15,000, which is not uncommon. Even people that have like collected modern since the boom. Not crazy to have $15,000 worth of cards. You trade 10,000 of those and you get one of these, and you get absolutely shafted. All that money that was put in there, the majority of your collection, basically gone. Hopefully they're made right. We have Neos here, says, notice that part 2, only the cards directly from Akabane's binder had the high quality back, meaning Pika and Zard from Nido, as well as the Gyarados from Sean, but that's the only occurrence in all the cards he had. Edit, thank you so much, PFM. You've done God's work here. Finally, someone has shown a light on what's going on. Man, I hope that it's always like there's always so much grimy stuff going on, and it's important that we see the grimy stuff so people can avoid it. But it's always so good to see someone just do the right thing at the expense of themselves. It's so refreshing, and it gives me hope for like the Pokemon hobby in general going forward. Just see that it's not just people fighting over modern product or losing their shit or yelling because they just want someone to blame. They just want to be a victim, that sort of thing. All right, what's Micah saying here? Thanks for the work, PFM. I've done the test myself with a custom Python script, and the result also confirms the same date to the minute. So if you guys have any of these, send them on over. Go either DM the people that have the ability to do this or post them in the thread. You'll need a high-quality scan in order to do so. I think the CGC scans themselves were good enough to do it. This one seems to be from August 2024. So you can see here clearly that I mean, we're gonna have to get out the pin board, cork board, and start making some ties to see when stuff was printed, who sold it, where it came from, that sort of information. Some of that stuff where if it's being sold on auction houses, they're not going to release that information unless they either have a subpoena or the FBI comes a knocking and says, hey, we got to figure out who sold this stuff, who sold that stuff. But trying to trace this stuff back. A lot of it can be traced back based on who shows off what cards, if the scans are available, to find out who got duped, who was involved, what happened where. All right, we have a Gezi here who, and this is, again, I hate how all of this stuff, anytime there's any like scandal or wrongdoing by your grading company, everyone's just like, the other grading companies are bad too. Yes, no kidding. They are. We have Gezi here saying there are several reasons why these were rejected by PSA, and it wasn't because they were sketchy. PSA doesn't assess something as sketchy. They're looking to see whether or not cards can be reliably authenticated by their team. The decision to reject was in no small part due to the complete lack of any scientific way to authenticate these. It wasn't difficult to see that the only thing they'd have was Akabane's word, which is just an appeal to authority. I mean, it's again, it's you're taking one person's word and they're benefiting financially from it, entirely financial. He's not getting them authenticated beforehand. It's not something that's being given out. It's not something that's being authenticated for a museum because he's donating them. He's actively selling these things. So like taking someone's word for it the same way the CGC shouldn't have taken Shell's word for the Protostoys when it comes back that, hey, whoop-de-doo, this dude was selling a copy in secret. He was getting someone else to sell it for him on eBay. And it took all the detective work that was me reaching out to the person that was selling it for him. In other cards and releases, anything graded can be compared to benchmarks or controls. So I think it was just like a dangerous, slippery slope where the grading companies were all in a competition to see who could grade the fancy stuff first. I've said it again. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for the consumer. It's greedy. And they don't want to miss out. It's like the same. It's the same. They got the FOMO. They don't want to miss out on grading the new cool prototype that just came out or anything like that. So, I mean, that's largely why I think that maybe they were just irresponsible regarding this stuff rather than, complacent or in on the scam. I guess we'll have to tune in and see. You can open a pack and pull a real card. In some harder areas, you can compare cards to other items released in proximity to them. With these, none of that was possible. Added to that, risk of forgery was high because they're only made of printer paper, so there are no counterfeit measures present. So that's the thing too. I mean, signatures we've seen a giant problem with as well. The money, the incentive there's incentive. There's incentive to scam with the signature stuff. So we've seen a ton of forgeries. We've seen the grading companies grading those. It's just real dangerous. I feel for the people that like to collect the autographs. If there's one that they can't obtain themselves, whether it's they can't travel, or whether it's just because they don't want to travel, or because that individual artist does not sign anymore, it sucks for all those people. It sucks. It's sucky in general. I mean, there's the whole Japanese scene, or I guess morals behind it, is the fact that if they sign stuff for someone, they don't want it to be resold. So there's that, and then that pisses off the artists. But then it's just a whole mess. So it's kind of the same thing here, where it's dangerous. Should you trust it unless you have absolute proof that it happened? And now, do you trust any of the stuff by the CGC signature series where they're supposed to be present? I think without like documentation. I mean, best case scenario, you're there, you get it signed yourself, you get it signed for yourself because you want to collect it, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, that's not how it works all the time. People will get impatient, or maybe they want to collect that type of thing. They're just going to blindly trust it because it's in a case. And we've seen just countless examples recently where these signatures they're forgeries. And we've seen it from PSA, we've seen it from BGS. PSA employs a very talented team of people who intrinsically understand the stuff they are looking to validate based on it, and when it isn't present, the decision is factual and not emotional. PSA has never, in my time with them, felt the need to prove itself to anyone either. and as a result is often not driven to pick up risky bets like these to gain traction and relevance. I don't know about that. Not entirely. And there's some stuff that they have graded that seems like it was a little risky, a little lacking information. Now, whether or not they had the more information that they didn't share, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing with all these companies. If they're going to authenticate this shit, show your receipts. Show us the receipts, and then let the end consumer decide whether or not they trust it. So here we have these test prints here that were graded by PSA. Wild stuff. They say these are the first Japanese Pokemon DPPT test proofs authenticated by PSA. And then they say the collector here says, I apologize, hadn't seen this post, just the one from Heritage. What are the origins of the info shared in that post? And the PSA account says, our experts did the research and provided the information. So again, it's just like a vague, like, trust us, please. Like, we know what we're doing. Are they worried that their competition is going to have the same information? Like, they should be more worried about the fact that they're being transparent and they're convincing, and they're if they're convinced, they should be able to convince you that it's the real thing, not just say like, oh yeah, trust us, we know it's real. So I don't know. And then also at the same time, do we not trust stuff that's coming from Akabane? As far as I'm aware, I think PSA also authenticated some stuff. Whether or not it's entirely due to the fact that it was Akabane's word on it, whether or not there was more to it. Again, all of that stuff should just be fully published. And if the grading company wants to pretend they're the good guy, looking out for the collector, looking out for the community, looking out for the hobby, they're there for the hobby. They love to say that shit in their advertising and in their board meetings and in their presentations that they do, any videos that they make. But let's see the action behind it. It's usually financially motivated, not right. They're not doing it for your best interest. It's a company. They got shareholders. They got their bills to pay. They got their money to make. They got their bonuses to make on the higher end. So we have Pokemon Arcanum, who says, hi, I just joined to share the data on this card that I own. This Clefairy presentation has a MIC code, which reads that as a date of June 1st, 2024. If we presume the code is printed upside down relative to the card orientation, it was also from a relatively early batch. So, it seems like it was just still printing and printing, and then we go back to that Zhao comment about tell them to stop printing them. It's looking like some people. It looks like Zhao might have known, or a weird coincidence. Here we have PFM says, let me clarify one thing about the beta playtest that has been asked. First, there appear to be two variants that you can distinguish by quality. I'll call them HQ beta and LQ beta. So the LQ probably being printed off on something else, as we've seen. Like, that they didn't differentiate between these two from the beginning. Like, what was CGC doing? Did they just like automatically trust anything that these, if you got the Akabane blessing one time, then you can just keep submitting as much stuff as you want, or they just don't look beyond that? Like, the blinders, purposeful blinders, accidental blinders, don't know. Irresponsible in the least. The colors are more saturated and the font isn't as jagged and glossy on HQ. Here are some more examples. Let's think, now with these cards in people's possession, and now with these people, the poor people that bought these things. I mean, not necessarily poor in like financially, but like just, it's probably relative the amount of money that you have that you got burned on this. And I don't care who's getting scammed. No one should get scammed. If Logan actually got scammed, I don't want to see that. I don't like Logan. I think he's a terrible person. That's my opinion. But if he was actually scammed, which apparently he wasn't, because we had Shine say that Logan never paid for the case, never intended to pay for the case, that it was going on Liquid Marketplace instead. I don't want to see him scam. I don't want to see anyone scam. I don't even want to see scammers get scammed. I don't know. We want to minimize the amount of scamming. We want to put it out there that if you're a scammer, you're going to get put on blast, and just blacklist anyone that's caught scamming. There's no reason. People will still do business with these like scammers, and it just blows my absolute mind. or they like brush it off, or like even like the shady shit that comes from the grading companies. Like, if you don't hold them accountable for that shit, and if they don't have to make it right, it's just going to keep happening. And there's a lot of money involved with that stuff, and it can be individuals or it can be a company or whatever that gets corrupt and they think they're going to get away with it. But like, we see like repeat offenders. People just blows my mind. All right, all HQ beta have no dots. All LQ beta have a date metadata that says 2024. So were the HQ real? We don't know. I still wouldn't trust them, even if the date shows 96. I mean, if the date, I just don't think you should trust anything that's coming from there. I mean, to each their own. Take your risks. Do what you got to do. Would be interested if anyone could demonstrate a counter example. Also note the population for most betas is approximately 8 last I checked. And even going forward, if there's any sort of indicator of if it's old or new or whatever, if it's post this coming out, this information coming out, I extra wouldn't trust it, just because do they find a workaround where they can print something, where they can change that metadata, use an older printer, change the date on the printer and the firmware of the printer, and produce things that look legitimate or pass a test the same way that it passed a test to get authenticated by CGC by Akabane saying that it was real. I've only been able to find at most one HQ beta per Pokemon. Finally, I don't believe that LQ betas are simply just scans/copies of HQ betas. Yeah, it seems like they might have files. Artifacts like stray dots are not copied over from HQ to LQ. But whether or not they're printing that, they're printing new stuff, also copying stuff. It seems like there's a lot going on here. We'll have to see if we can break it all down. Once there's enough data, once there's enough, I guess, people that show what they got, where they got it from, trace it back, who had it, match up the dates, see if there's certain dates where certain people got certain cards, that sort of thing. Like, I think that's going to be pretty revealing and important information to put together. So everyone that's contributing to this, thank you very much for what you're doing. We have Charizard Espana. Says, well, according to Alt, CGC are taking it very seriously. CNG have removed some they have coming up on auction, but had sold 6 figures of them recently that are on their way to eBay authenticators. So I don't know how that's like a weird little scenario there, where you have eBay authentication that I think is mostly, if not entirely, PSA now. At least for the graded stuff, it was PSA. So PSA is like eBay is authenticating with PSA the stuff that was authenticated by CGC, but like, do they have any means to say like, hey, you can't sell these anymore? That sort of thing. So it's a weird spot for everyone involved. It looks like most of the consignment and or auction companies are taking these things down. I think it's important. I think it's in the best interest of everyone that they put a full halt on all of that stuff until everything is figured out here. It could take a very long time before everything is figured out. I guess with Golden told me that support team was looking at my request, but the cards are definitely still up. They definitely are. Hopefully they do what they got to do here. These are all signed. Yeah, hopefully they put a pause. Cancel those auctions. Put a pause on it. And we have PFM with another post that says, what I suspect is that the HQ beta, I don't think I have one open, but it looks like Fanatics took them down as well. There was a ton that were sold through there. There's a ton that were sold through a lot of these auction companies. They're going to kind of defer back to, or they're going to blame the grading company for that. They're going to say it's not our job to authenticate these things, take it up with CGC. So I think it's largely going to come down to CGC, whether they make it right for all the people that purchase these. I'm hoping that they have a method or have a way to fully refund everyone on whatever the last purchased price was of the cards themselves. You're clearly going to have to show evidence of that. But I think that's a best case scenario. I don't know what this is a mess. This is an absolute mess. In this case, a second layer of dots was not printed on because presumably the printer used for HQ beta does not add dots. You can see some of the alpha pattern appearing in the Pokeball. Looks like chickenpox. In this case, the dots that would be overlapping the blue parts were not picked up. Higher res image would be great to help figure this out. If it is true, that means that the HQ beta authenticity is contingent on the alpha pattern authenticity because it implies the HQ beta was printed after the alpha prototype. Whether it was 1996 or 2024 is unclear. Oh man, what an absolute disaster. HQ back. We got the alpha pattern HQ back. Absolutely gross. All right, we have E2D2. I like all the you haven't seen someone post. Last post in 2 years. A lot of people kind of moved on to like Discord and stuff like that from the forums. The forums back in the day, this was like the spot. This was, I mean, it's still a great spot if you need to look up, if you need to find somebody that knows a lot about something, especially if it's obscure and the information isn't like posted everywhere. You're probably going to find them on E4. E2D2 saying Akabane's culpability. Someone posted pictures of cards where Akabane's signature is cut off. That implies to me he had to have been signing a sheet of cards that were then cut down to a card size afterwards. Very unlikely he was signing sheets in 1996. No, I think all the signatures are recently. I don't think he was signing his own playtest cards or any of the playtest cards back in 1996. I don't think anyone was asking for that. I don't think that was a thing back then. I would imagine that all of it. Signing a sheet of playtest cards in 2024 seems pretty damning. So if he's signing it in 2024, he's putting it on the card, but not just on the card. I think there's a picture that we have coming up where it's like clearly goes way off. Like he signed them before they were cut up, which is not good. Not a good look. Again, don't know what the agreement. We need to know what the initial agreements were, what the agreements were between the people that were purchasing from him, the middleman of the middleman, and all that other stuff to find out exactly what's going on. Adding some more images, I got the dots to appear with a mix of blacklight and flashlight on the alpha playtest. So interesting little technique. If you have one of these, then maybe you can try that out. Discussed in the other mega thread. So here it is. We have what is clearly the autograph going off of the card itself, indicating that he was probably signing these before they were cut, before they were put onto the cardstock. A little bit of an oopsie doopsie on whoever was cutting these up. You don't want to throw it at Charizard though. That would suck. But like that's the thing too. It's just like if he was signing them himself, if he printed them himself and signed them himself before, why wouldn't he just sign them after cutting them? Unless, like, I don't think that would necessarily be easier to sign them all. We got Heritage Auctions. It's Swolepoke here. You know the latest scandal is too real when E2D2 comes out to comment. All right, what else we got? We're coming up to the end here. We got some more. I think this is all important information. Thank you very much for everyone that has lasted this long. If people have questions regarding the printer dots being present, they can be visible using a phone camera up close and a flash on. Then on an iPhone, adjust the saturation and vibrance all the way to the left, rightmost line, then change the filter to vivid. Sad day for everyone that is involved, and CGC has some serious questions to answer along with Akabane. Absolutely. I think if there's any contract that was put in place, wouldn't surprise me if there were like non-disclosure agreements, but I don't think that's going to hold up when law enforcement comes knocking and can pull that out, all that information. We'll want to know all that information. BFM, another post. I wanted to provide more observations about the alpha prototypes. The dot matrix is different, and I've referred to it as the alpha pattern in this thread. I've been using this triangle and these two pairs of dots as a quick way to identify it. So we're getting intense here. We're getting real. PFM, for anyone that isn't aware, super analytical individual, and wouldn't surprise me if this gets more and more complex as we go. There's a pattern to the dots, and it repeats on a diagonal. If you rotate the pattern 90 degrees, you get the 16 by 24 pattern that repeats across the page. If anyone has expertise in this as well, either reach out to myself or PFM if you think you can lend assistance, or if you have any additional expertise. This is not like his main bread and butter here, but he's absolutely killing it. There's a dissertation that breaks down different dot patterns. The alpha pattern matches the corner pattern in this paper. You can see the corner in the top left grid above. As mentioned, this is the pattern produced by Konica Minolta, Japanese brand, and some Epson printers. So identifying where the printers are, what the printers are, what the printer was that was used, can definitely assist. again, it doesn't guarantee. This is one of those things where it's just like, if you're a grading company and you can't 100% guarantee that something's real, or there's too much shadiness around something, you just don't touch it. Just don't touch it. Same way if you're making an informed purchase, if there's any signs of something bad going on, and yes, people all the time, it's like human instinct to put on the blinders when you see something that's either a good deal or something that you think is like too good that you're not going to see again. You have that fear of missing out. And I think there's a lot of that going on. It's different than the fear of missing out on Prismatic Evolutions ETBs on the shelf. Those will be back later. There's different degrees. So we got pattern 3. It seems like this pattern could not be broken publicly. Both papers conclude that there is likely no time information encoded, but presumably you could get the model number and check when the model was released. This may be as far as I can take it. If U.S. federal law enforcement decides this is important enough, I think they will. They have the potential to request the company to decode it. Freedom of Information request has revealed that they have a working relationship with Konica Minolta, or at least the two separate companies before they merged. So yeah, I can only imagine they would absolutely stomp this stuff. We have Pokemon peeps on the case here. A lot of stuff that I'm sure they're a lot more familiar with than the just what's publicly available. We got Nadukin shared this in a story on Instagram. We have looks like there's an easier way to detect real cards. I have 2 cards purchased from early 2023, and they look like the lower example, and 3 cards proven 2024. They look like the upper examples. Yeah, I think they're more likely to be real. It's hard to say because you don't think that they're not gonna like print it with a 1996 and then like all of a sudden oopsie doopsie forget, unless it was somebody else that was printing those with different equipment. I don't know. I just don't trust any of it. I don't think there's a reason to. I think it's just tainted beyond the cool factor regardless. I think this is just like this is just a terrible situation. It's a terrible series of events that happen, like many others with scams and all of it. Just like it sucks so bad to see something that's so cool and should be something cool and should be kind of celebrated and should be archived and should be a cool way to go back and see how it all started. Just it seems like it always just turns into an absolute disaster, a scam of some sort, deceit, and or people trying to exploit it, whether it's legitimately exploiting something or with a little dash of what looks like scanned and or printed recently copies. So maybe it is possible to tell the difference from the back even without dots. I tried to compare it, but I'm not 100% sure what I'm looking for. I just added the back of my Zubat to this picture. Color difference due to lighting. Yeah, you're going to have a color difference for sure. I don't know. I think there's going to be varying degrees of what the backs look like, what everything looks like. If you had, depending on how many printers were used, how many were scanned, how many were printed off from the original file, the quality of the original printer and the second printer, or who knows how many printers were involved. It's an absolute mess. See what we got here. Seems that Alt are still listing the cards on eBay despite knowing the issues at hand. That's interesting because they made a statement about it, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know what you have to gain. I mean, other than commission or whatever. You're going to have a lot of people that are trying to unload these. I think eBay should do their best to keep these off of the platform. Same with anywhere else that allows selling, whether it's third party or whatever. I think it just a hard avoid. Just hard cease, avoid, let everything get figured out here. See if people, the more sales that happen, the more of a mess it's going to be. And then whether CGC is going to, if they do refund anyone, are they going to refund people that after the news broke or after a statement? And then are people going to fabricate fake sales at this point in time, saying they didn't know or whatever? It's a disaster. It's a disaster that should have been avoided, that could have been avoided, but unfortunately was not. But that's kind of what happens. Like if CGC or anyone else lends credibility to this stuff, then it can kind of run rampant. And that's why, as somebody that's like an experienced collector, you should be very careful with what you're acknowledging as real or not real. Same thing with the grading company. Same thing with kind of anyone that's involved with this stuff. If you have any kind of, you need to err on the side of caution. And it's sad that you do. It's sad that you can't trust anyone's word for anything, especially not somebody with financial interest. We have Rick. Andy recently held an auction on many beta playtest cards. I've reached out to see if they are aware of the situation and see if they can confirm where they obtained the cards. After analyzing 2 cards with the CGC cert numbers starting in 6006, they appear to be also printed in 2024. Attached are the photos and the printer dots highlighted before the separation line. In the Porygon card, it is clear that the 8th column shows 24. While the Zapdos card has a faint dot in the 16th position and a prominent dot in the 8th position in the 8th column. This is due to lower quality images and distortion. Yeah, it could be. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. Last one here is Boofs. I wonder if it is possible to trace back the LQ and HQ to the sources. So I'd like to see a lot of tracing back of everything. It'd be interesting to see who got what, who got duped, who got where they came from. The differences in the different sellers, middleman, and all that other stuff, and trace back as much as possible. So the more information you guys have, the better. I'm trying to put something together. From what I understand, we have 3 categories now. We got real prototypes, playtests, HQ, high Q, low Q versions. But again, this is kind of where it all comes back to. It's gonna be the who knew. Where they come from, and who knew. And this infographic is only going to grow when we have more information to see what is put together. I got a ton of other content that I want to get out, that I want to get done this week, that was planned for this week. But I do want to keep a close eye on this. And if there's additional information, please reach out. Discord, at me in general chat, if there's anything important on this or anything else. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for, this is a monster video. Holy sweet mother. Thanks for joining the Discord. See you guys next time. Love you. Bye. Look out for each other. Be careful. There are grifters. Grifters gonna grift.